everybody. Earl at thelogbook.com, back for more Voyages of Shelf Discovery. It's been a minute, but we have here a few Star Trek items, some newish, some substantially older, and wasn't sure any one of these would make its own video, would be worthy of its own video, so I thought we would open them all at once. What we have here is the Captain Pike ornament. This is one of last year's Hallmark Star Trek keepsake ornaments. We have some magnetic deltas from Fansets, and we have the CD at the bottom there, which is an enigma that we'll get to in just a moment. First off, looking at the Fansets deltas here, these are replicating what were on the original uniforms for Star Trek The Motion Picture, actually patches. But these are badges, and as you can see, they have some relief, they have some texture, there are bits that are taller than other bits, and it's an interesting approach. It's their interpretation of if the patches seen on the uniforms in 1979 were actually a piece that was not sewn onto the uniform. This one came out of its package willingly first. These are the magnetic deltas and not the pinback ones. So you have, as always with these, a couple of decently strong magnets on each piece. Also, each piece is a fairly substantial little chunk of metal, so these have some heft to them. That the pinback versions probably don't have quite the same heft. But these, because the back of the badge is tasked with keeping the front of the badge on whatever you were attaching this to, it also has to be somewhat substantial. So I believe the yellow badge is operations, green is medical, and orange is engineering. There are a couple of other ones, or actually yellow may be sciences. I've already forgotten. That's bad. And there's a white one, of course, which I believe is command. But for no real reason, these just kind of tripped my trigger. There's the next gen comm badge, so you can kind of gauge. These are roughly the same size. And like I said, they actually did quite a bit of work on these. The filled color circle has a different texture than the delta. There is some relief. The delta stands up over the circle. They're quite nice. I'm definitely a fan. Now, next up we have Captain Pike here from Strange New Worlds. This is one of several Star Trek ornaments that Hallmark did this was for the 2024 Christmas season, and they did a big sale at the end of the year, and whereas I hadn't picked up any of the 2024 ornaments, suddenly I was able to pick up a few. Not many, but a few. So let's go ahead and we'll look it over one more time and get this one open. This one does have a sound feature. I will warn you up front that I set the batteries aside after opening it and never actually put the batteries in it to test the sound feature on camera. So my apologies about that. Probably there are the 2 button batteries that you have to put in there. Probably the voice of Anson Mount saying something, either from the show or something custom recorded, not sure which. One of the reasons I wanted to get this was prior to Master Replicas announcing that they were going to do action figures in the scale of the old Playmates figures, I thought this would probably be the only shot I had at getting a Captain Pike in the correct scale. And I hoped it was the correct scale, but the measurements definitely made it sound as though it was. The detailing on this is very nice. The whole chair there. And even if Master Replicas gets around to doing a figure of Pike, he's not going to be able to sit like that, even if you provide him with a chair, which I'm sure the fellows from Triple Fiction are already on that. In fact, I think they've already done one. It's already available. But there's the, push the button. Don't know why. The batteries are not in it. And maybe this is one I can leave the batteries out of, because this one is going to sit on the shelf with fellow crew members of that era of Star Trek shows. There's Saru there's the Playmates Saru figure. Very, very close match on scale. I'm very happy with that, to say the least. So, of course, as always, this pleases the Daleks. Now, let's get to the CD. Oh, hey, Starfleet Academy soundtrack already dropped. But this is the Starfleet Academy soundtrack from the 90s CD-ROM game. Now, there are two versions of this. There is a fairly common one that Interplay did themselves on some special box set editions of the games. I gather those were in Europe. This was intended for the US market, and it was licensed by Sonic Images, which, circa 1998, was best known for doing soundtrack CDs from Babylon 5. This was teed up for a late 98, end of 1998 release, and then it never came out, because here's what happened. Also releasing in late 98 were the soundtrack for Star Trek Insurrection, which at that time was brand new in the theaters. And also, Sony had a 20th anniversary edition of the Star Trek The Motion Picture soundtrack lined up, which I believe was supposed to... I think they were supposed to hold off and do it in 1999 for the actual 20th anniversary. They would have had a whole year, because Star Trek The Motion Picture was an end-of-the-year movie. And so Sony went ahead and dropped theirs in late 98, and then Paramount pulled the plug on the Sonic Images release and said, whoa, it's too much Star Trek music at one time, which I for one disagree with. I would have happily bought all three. As it is, I bought all two of them that did come out. I never thought I would actually see one of these in person. As you can see down there by the barcode, it's been notched, so it has been remaindered, because these never shipped. It's my understanding the only ones that got out were review copies and advancers. As for how I obtained this was from the sell-off of the collection of the late Douglas Fake, who was the head of the Intrada soundtrack label. So this was Doug's personal copy. And as far as the contents go, I will tell you this. Several years ago, Film Score Monthly did a big, I think it was 14 CD box set called the Ron Jones Project, which was all of the music that composer Ron Jones did for the Star Trek franchise. So 4 seasons of The Next Generation, plus 2 computer games. This was one of them. Everything that is on this CD is also on that box set. Big problem, that box set is also now out of print and is extremely, extremely expensive to get if you didn't get it back in the day. Now, this does have, you see over on the right, there are bonus tracks, which are called the Star Trek The Next Generation Suite for Virtual Orchestra. These were Ron Jones basically recreating some of his best music from the first season of Next Generation entirely on synthesizers. That material only shows up on this CD. And I had never heard them before. They're interesting. They're obviously synth recreations of what were, originally synth and orchestral recordings. But at that time, in 98, you did not have music out yet from Heart of Glory or Skin of Evil, which episodes the Suite for Virtual Orchestra covered. And so that would have been a huge thing to have in 98. Never came out. So this is an item I never thought I would hold in my hot little hands. Waited nearly 30 years for it. I don't throw around numbers attached to dollar signs on this show a whole lot. I will tell you this, probably because the material has appeared on that box set, probably because there is a different version of the CD that has a different selection of bonus tracks that are not on this one, but they are not the Suite for Virtual Orchestra, and that CD is much more common. With those two things in mind, this was priced at $18. So, wow. Not only did I never expect to actually see one in the flesh or own one, much less, I certainly didn't expect to be able to afford it. So, one last time, I give Douglas Fake my money, and I'm happy to give all of these things a home. Nice little Star Trek haul for you. That's my 3 categories of Star Trek merch right there. Is something kind of figure related, pins, and soundtrack music. I suppose there probably should be a ship in there to round it out, but as it is, I believe this was enough to fill a video. Hope you enjoyed seeing these items, and we'll be back to open a few more things, and probably going to start talking about the future of the hobby, vis-a-vis whether or not it has one. Because I'm not sure it does in this day and age, and various socio-political, economic things happening. We'll talk about that later.